A few months ago, Stellantis made headlines with a major announcement. The company revealed plans to move its Jeep production line from Canada to the United States to avoid tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. At the time, Washington celebrated the decision as a major political victory. But by October 2025, the situation had completely flipped. Doug Ford publicly condemned Trump, calling him a tyrant, and the Canadian government launched an unprecedented legal battle. Across Ontario, more than 3,000 Canadian workers took to the streets in protest. What had once been hailed as a strategic win for Stellantis was now on the verge of becoming one of its biggest blunders. No one had realized that Canada had been quietly preparing for a counterattack. Behind the scenes, Ottawa had been laying the groundwork for a complex legal and political response. And by the fall of 2025, that trap had begun to close. It all traced back to February 2025, a moment that few could have predicted would spark such a confrontation. Stellantis, the parent company of Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler, and Fiat, had just halted operations at its Brampton, Ontario plant. Originally, the facility had been set for upgrades to produce the next-generation Jeep Compass. But everything changed after the Trump administration imposed a 25% tariff in April 2025. The new tariff targeted all vehicles manufactured outside U.S. borders, upending Stellantis' production strategy overnight. The company acted quickly, deciding to move Jeep Compass production from Canada to Belvidere, Illinois. On paper, the move made sense. Assembling vehicles in the U.S. would eliminate the tariff, reduce costs, and curry favor with the White House. By February and March, Stellantis announced a temporary suspension of operations in Brampton. But everyone knew it wasn't temporary. It was the end. Around 3,000 workers lost their jobs. Canadian media covered it briefly, marking a clear win for America and a painful loss for Canada. In Washington, the mood was celebratory. Trump took to social media declaring, "America wins again," while the U.S. Commerce Secretary touted the move as proof that the America First policy was working. Economists predicted that even more manufacturing lines would return to the U.S. yet. In Ottawa, the response was calm and deliberate. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Premier Doug Ford reminded Stellantis of its commitments under the 2022 Electric Vehicle Agreement, which required the company to maintain Canadian jobs. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly met with Stellantis executives in March, warning that pulling out of Brampton would violate the agreement. Ottawa quietly began preparing its legal case, and from that moment, the story shifted from one of victory and defeat to one of strategy and resilience. Instead of engaging in open confrontation, Ontario took a different approach. Doug Ford turned his focus towards Stellantis' development plans in Windsor. The province encouraged the company to add a third shift at its Windsor plant, creating hundreds of new local jobs. Many of the displaced Brampton workers were reassigned to the Next Star Energy project, part of Ontario's broader industrial restructuring plan. Over 2,000 workers transitioned to the $5 billion battery manufacturing facility in Windsor, which was expected to create around 2,500 jobs in total, cementing Ontario's role in North America's electric vehicle industry. Meanwhile, south of the border, Stellantis was expanding rapidly. In Belvidere, Illinois, the company prepared to reopen a previously shuttered plant, announcing plans to invest up to $13 billion and boost U.S. production capacity by 50% over the next 4 years, an ambitious goal that promised more than 5,000 new American jobs. Stellantis President Antonio Filosa declared that success in the U.S. market would drive the company's global growth. But reality soon proved far harsher. Stellantis had underestimated the cost of operating in the United States. Average wages in Illinois were 25 to 30% higher than in Ontario, pushing labor expenses through the roof. At the same time, U.S. energy prices surged by up to 40% in 2025, a blow the company hadn't anticipated. The Buy American regulations also forced Stellantis to rebuild its entire supply chain. For years, the company had relied on components from Europe, Mexico, and Canada, but now it had to source everything domestically. Operations became more expensive, slower, and increasingly inefficient. Supply delays piled up, productivity dropped, and overall performance plummeted. By June, Stellantis was in financial trouble. Additional costs in the second quarter alone rose by $300 million, pushing its net loss for the first half of the year to $2.3 billion. Analysts warned that losses could exceed $7 billion by year's end if the trend continued. Several plants in Michigan and Indiana halted production, 2 Jeep models were discontinued, and about 900 American workers lost their jobs. Trump continued to proclaim that America was winning, but the numbers told a very different story. Protectionism, rather than saving money, was inflicting serious damage on the US auto industry. Meanwhile, Canada was quietly turning the situation to its advantage. By late summer, the Next Star battery plant in Windsor was fully operational, creating 2,500 new jobs as planned. Ontario's unemployment rate held steady at 5.6%. Auto parts exports to Europe jumped 18%, and Windsor was emerging as North America's hub for electric vehicle manufacturing. The Canadian government moved swiftly to introduce new policies, ensuring that foreign investors could no longer withdraw operations overnight. More than $1.2 billion in domestic investment flowed back into the Windsor-Essex region, solidifying Canada's position as a rising powerhouse in the global automotive industry. On the international stage, Canada was increasingly seen as a safe haven, stable, transparent, and largely shielded from global political turbulence. But everything changed in October 2025, when a new political and economic shockwave hit. On Tuesday, October 14th, Stellantis announced a $13 billion investment. The news initially seemed positive, but it came with a devastating twist. The Jeep Compass would not be returning to Brampton as previously promised. Instead, production would be moved entirely to Illinois. That same day, 3,000 Brampton workers received an automated message: "Your job will not be coming back." Within minutes, outrage erupted across Ontario. The next morning, Premier Doug Ford appeared before reporters, visibly furious. "President Trump is a jerk," he said bluntly. "He's driving me crazy. Ontario will not back down. I will not let him walk all over us." Ford also urged Prime Minister Mark Carney to take a stronger stance toward Washington, declaring, "It's time to hit back, hard and decisively." That's the only language this man understands. Later that day, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly sent an official letter to Stellantis' executive board, condemning the company's decision as unacceptable. She reminded them that Stellantis had received billions of dollars in Canadian government support in exchange for a clear commitment to maintain domestic production. Any move violating that agreement, she warned, could constitute a serious breach. Prime Minister Carney later confirmed that he had personally spoken with Stellantis' global CEO. He stated that the company remained committed to keeping a presence in Brampton and was exploring the possibility of building a different model there. However, he added that any final decision would likely depend on the outcome of the ongoing Canada-US-Mexico trade negotiations, which were entering their final phase. The labor union Unifor reacted swiftly and strongly. National President Lana Payne accused Stellantis of using Canadian workers as pawns in Trump's political game. "Stellantis cannot be allowed to betray its commitments to our members," she declared. The backlash intensified on Friday, October 17th, when the Unifor Stellantis Council issued a formal letter condemning the company's actions as shameful and unacceptable, calling them a blatant display of contempt for workers. The union revealed it had been notified of Stellantis' decision only minutes before the official press release, a move it described as deeply disrespectful. Stellantis spokesperson Luann Gosselin attempted to ease public anger, saying, "Canada remains an integral part of our strategy. We continue to have plans for Brampton and will share details once discussions with the government are complete." But few were convinced. Union representatives openly questioned Stellantis President Antonio Filosa's claim that strong plans existed for Brampton. "We have not been informed of any replacement plans," a Unifor spokesperson said. "There is no reason to believe those words are genuine." The crisis now stretched far beyond Canada's borders. Stellantis was facing severe financial trouble worldwide. A net loss of $2.3 billion in just the first half of 2025 had shaken investor confidence, sent its stock tumbling, and rattled global markets. In the United States, Stellantis factories were running at barely half capacity, around 52%, with thousands of unfinished vehicles still sitting idle on production lines. Meanwhile, restructuring and depreciation costs added another $3.3 billion in expenses. Analysts concluded that Stellantis had not solved its problems. It had merely traded a political crisis for a deeper financial one. The company's situation underscored a modern paradox. Relocating production no longer guarantees success. Moving a factory today is not just a financial decision. It's a test of how adaptable a nation truly is. What once seemed like a clever way to sidestep tariffs had become a costly lesson in the price of instability. While Stellantis struggled, Canada continued to hold the upper hand. With its strong legal framework and steady governance, Ottawa remained firm amid the trade turmoil. South of the border, Washington was wrestling with higher costs and growing political chaos. Even as the reshoring movement gained momentum in the US, profits failed to keep pace. Many multinational corporations began rethinking their strategies, viewing Canada, Mexico, and the European Union as more stable and reliable investment destinations. The Stellantis crisis was no longer just about cars or tariffs. It had become a broader lesson about who truly controls economic value in an interconnected world, where borders no longer guarantee stability. Canada, for its part, chose silence and strategy, and that approach was paying off. Stellantis and Trump, it seemed, had both learned a hard truth. Sometimes, loud moves lead to quiet failure. So, what do you think? Did Stellantis make the right decision by moving its production to the United States? Or did it walk straight into a trap that Canada had carefully prepared? Have Trump's tariffs really strengthened American companies? Or have they pulled them into an even deeper financial mess? And is Canada's quiet, strategic approach becoming a new model for global trade? Was Doug Ford's angry outburst, calling Trump a tyrant, just an emotional reaction? Or was it a warning that Canada will no longer bow to Washington? Could Ottawa's legal pressure force Stellantis back to Brampton? And might Windsor's rise as a new electric vehicle hub reshape North America's industrial map? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think will be the ultimate winner? Will Stellantis return to Brampton? Or will that factory become just a memory? Please subscribe to the Time Fold channel and don't forget to like.